Hey everybody, Eric Brown, MOBO-Media, back at you again, back at you again. Hey, I want to talk about a subject that sometimes really upsets me, and that's drugs within our community and the use of drugs within our community. And I don't say that when I say upset, I'm not saying upset at the folks in my community. I'm saying I'm upset at the folks that put these drugs into our community and label us as losers because we're losing, we use those drugs. And I'm here to tell you, there's nobody on this earth that loves using drugs or wants to use drugs. I firmly believe that. Some people can call me naive or whatever you want, but I have a mental health background, behavioral health, psych, substance abuse, all of that. So I've dealt with a lot of it. I've dabbled with drugs myself, real talk. But for legal reasons, I'm not gonna go there because I am a retired military veteran, and but you know, I'm not ashamed of speaking my truth, but I think there's a place and time for it. But just trust that I was not a perfect person before I came to the Air Force. I was just as exposed to drugs and things like that to everybody else. And so um, yeah, but nobody wants to use drugs. Drugs to me is just a way to cope for folks that either lost hope, folks that are in pain, folks that have lost someone, folks that have lost themselves, man. And that's why I never kick anybody or talk crazy to anybody that's on drugs. Never. Now there are some folks out there. Don't get me wrong. There are people out there that use drugs or push drugs and they think it's a joke, and I really I gotta be careful how I say this, but I'm not how can I say this? I'm not a fan of drugs being pushed into our community by our people. But there are reasons behind that because the folks that are pushing drugs in the communities, well, our people that are pushing drugs in the community, they too have issues with losing hope and have no other options in terms of taking care of families and things like that. And so hell, drugs were put in front of us, and so we had to make do and do what we could with those drugs, whether using them to cope with certain things that were going on, the trauma of being in these contained, jail cell like black communities, or we use drugs to cope with loss and some people never recover from that. Some people lose family members, man, just never recover from it. Whether it's fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunties, they never recover, man, and the drugs just take over. And drugs these days are so powerful, they're so addictive, it's unbelievable. I'm talking about the oxycodones and the hydrocodone, the Tylenol 3s, the methamphetamine, the heroin, the cocaine, the crack, all that stuff, man. Not weed, not marijuana. That ain't drugs. I don't give a damn. Nobody said that is not a drug. That's a plant. It is a plant. No man is making marijuana. No one produces marijuana. You can grow it, but you can't make it. But you can go and make Tylenol and you can make oxycodone and hydrocodone and for those sick ass people that do that and push it, it's all about profits. And then when the government, steps in after a lot of pressure behind it, instead of putting these people in jail, which I think they should be put in jail, the folks that produce this stuff and push it, knowing the harm it has on people, they should be put in jail. No different than the folks within our community getting stopped by cops and find a doobie in the ashtray and want to take them to jail for that. But these big corporations, none of them go to jail. They never go to jail. What happens to them? The government just gives them a fine, and that fine is nothing. It's a drop in the water compared to the amount of money they're making behind the drugs. So I I don't know, man. This subject is so it inflames me so much because there's nobody in my community or within its communities that has the resources, the money, or anything like that to bring all these drugs from the outside in. It doesn't happen that way. I don't know any person in Fort Worth with an airplane that flies hell drugs in Fort Worth. I don't know people like that, but I know drug smugglers who are connected to politicians and um, I'm not. I'm. You know what? I'm not gonna get into that. That gets a little deep. There's some things that I know that I don't want to. I don't want to let the cat out the bag, but I will eventually let the cat out the bag about what some of this is all about. But some of these drugs that are pushing to our communities, it's at the highest levels, man. It's the highest levels of government, and it's a shame. It's a shame because I've seen drugs wreak havoc on my own family. Drugs also, drugs almost prevented me from coming to the Air Force. I'm being honest with you. People look at me and they're like, what? Huh? Like, yeah, that's my truth. Like I told you, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. I've had a long career. I've have a loving family. I have great friends. They know who I am. They know what my heart is. And like I said, nobody wants to be on drugs. Drugs just happen to be a way, an easy way and a cheap way for folks to cope within communities who have been afflicted by horrible oppression and things like that. So, um, for those of you out there that are addicted to drugs or using drugs, I just ask that you find a way away from the drugs. Find something else other to do than the drugs, because they're not only harming you, they're harming the folks around you. You know, when a person is addicted, the whole family is addicted. I've worked with addiction in the military, substance abuse, um, whether it be alcohol, drugs. I had to be the guy to help with urinalysis testing for military members to make sure they were not using these illicit or illegal drugs. So I'm very familiar with all of that. I'm very familiar with, but I'm also familiar with the other side, the medical side, where they push these drugs that are more damaging than marijuana and some of the other stuff that folks use out here. No one says a damn thing about that. It's a slap on the wrist. They call it medical. Get out of here. Get out of here. It ain't medical. It's money. That's what it is. A big M. It's the big M. It's not that M. It's the other M. Not medical. It's money. And there are big dollars being made off of it. And from people at some of the highest levels you could not imagine, could not believe. With that, I'm not gonna, make this some long drawn out conversation about drugs and drug use. I just want to say that, when you see me and know me, know that my feelings about drugs is that I hate the fact that some folks are afflicted with this horrible um, thing, this drug abuse, drug use, drug abuse, this sort of thing. So I pray for y'all and pray for those out there who are secretly addicted to things. There are folks out there secretly addicted to things. Um, and oftentimes they don't realize it, particularly with these medications that are prescribed, such as oxycodone, hydrocodone, all this other stuff, man, that they push on folks, Xanax, all this stuff, man. Come on, man, give me a break. Give me a break. The doctors never tell you about the holistic ways of dealing with things. They never tell you to go out and, become one with nature, go on a nature hike or take a cruise or, spend more time with family. They never tell you that. Doctors never tell you that when you're going to the office sick. The first thing they ask you, which pharmacy do you use? Am I lying? Am I lying? The first thing they ask is which pharmacy do you use. That's one thing you want to know. Well, what's your insurance and which pharmacy do you use? That's money. Come on, man. It's money. So again, I'm not going to make this some long drawn out conversation, but no one wants to be on drugs. Drugs in our community has just been a way of making do, of dealing with hopelessness and trying to, feed our families. And I'll end it with that.